When I, 28 female, was growing up, my relationship with my sister Cady was fraught with rivalry and resentment. We seemed to clash about everything since the earliest days of our childhood, to the point where every interaction felt like a contest. Putting us in the same room together was a bit like trying to mix oil and water. There was just no clean way to do it. I should say up front that I was every bit of an ounce of competitive if she was for a time. Before she left for college, I would always audition when our local community theater put on a youth production. Typically, I would audition for the same play that Cady was auditioning for. Sometimes one of us got it and the other did not. Sometimes we both got it. It was rare that neither one of us got a part, but this left us in a constant competition with no clear winner, and the rivalry started spiraling out of control. We fought constantly. We insulted each other and told embarrassing secrets in front of each other's boyfriends. After she left for college, I did choir in high school and played lacrosse, simply because those were the same exact extracurriculars that she had done at that age. I wasn't trying to follow in her footsteps per se. I just wanted to prove that I could do those things better. In all honesty, though, I'd say that we were evenly matched in most things. Things settled down when Cady graduated and got her teaching certification, while I instead pursued culinary school. You would think that pursuing each different path would finally put our rivalry to bed. Instead, the opposite happened. Over the years from high school and beyond, Cady became increasingly bitter as we started growing out of adolescence and into adulthood, at which point I started to gain much more success than she did. When I managed to get engaged to a restaurant supplier while Cady was still single, any chance we might have had at developing a harmonious or even civil relationship seemed to be out the window. I'm now living in the city with my fiancé Roy, where I own and manage a rather successful restaurant. Cady still lives with our mom and dad, up until about a year ago when she moved in with her best boyfriend, David. Since not long before she moved in with him, Cady and I have not really been on speaking terms. Our silence actually started just a couple years after I opened my restaurant. Cooking has been a major passion of mine since I was young. When Cady and I would fight growing up, I could always find solace by experimenting in the kitchen. Becoming good at something that my sister wasn't competing with me, it helped to give me a greater sense of a purpose. So, for a long time, I dreamt of forging my own path and carving out a niche for myself in the culinary world. I would watch cooking shows and dream that I, too, would one day become the proud owner and operator of a thriving eatery in the heart of the city. With that success came Cady's envy. As I ascended to the ranks of local acclaim, Cady's resentment festered like never before. Her undercurrents of jealousy and silent scorn quickly seemed to threaten our already fragile relationship. It got worse than ever when she asked me for money. She lost her job right around the time our parents told her she needed to either find her own place or start paying rent. Because I was running a successful business and was dating a man who had also done fairly well for himself, Cady felt like I owed her a piece of my success. Well, I offered to loan her some money for a deposit if she was able to find an apartment, providing that she was able to pay it back within 3 months. That apparently wasn't good enough, and she wanted me to pay for the whole thing. I talked to Roy, and he said that he was willing to chip in for the other half. He was also willing to extend the loan to 6 months instead of 3, and I thought that was more than fair. Cady, however, still said no. She said that I was being selfish and that I would help her get out of our parents' house if I really cared about her as a sister. I'm not really keen on being manipulated, so I put my foot down and at the end withdrew the offer entirely. Our parents were pretty split on the whole thing. While our father thought that I was doing the right thing and that Cady needed to make her own financial decisions, such as pursuing a loan from the bank if she really needed one, our mom told me that helping Cady out this one time would not be such a big deal, since Roy and I could both afford it anywho. I respected both of their opinions, and neither one has ever really played favorites with us. In the end, though, the choice is ultimately mine, and I chose not to give the money to somebody whom I saw as being rather ungrateful in the face of asking for help in the first place. For that reason, Cady stopped talking to me entirely. According to my parents, Cady spent about the first week of our radio silence hitting up the bars every night. My father was furious about it since he felt that she was making all the wrong financial decisions, and they'd only given her a month to find a place or pay rent. Cady wasn't even looking for jobs at other schools because she was genuinely too hungover in the mornings to get out of bed. It was a mess. Somehow, though, it worked in her favor. After living that way for about a week, she demanded to meet David. See, David's a successful litigator and has been at the bar celebrating a case that he had won earlier that day. As my mom later told me, it turns out that David actually frequents the same bar a lot, and Cady's been going primarily because she would meet him the first night and was just hoping to run into him again. After that second meeting, they started dating. By the time Cady's deadline ran out for finding her own place, he would agree to let her move in with him instead. I learned some of this through Facebook, and I tried to text or call her for about a month after the loan issue, but she never responded. Even so, she never blocked me, and she's constantly posting about how happy she is. Maybe this will sound dumb or self-centered, but sometimes I think she left me unblocked intentionally, as if she's still humbling in my direction despite not talking to me. I don't use Facebook a lot, though, so I haven't really let it bother me too much. Part of the reason I think Cady's posts have been directed is just because I don't think that I'm the only target. When she first moved in with David, a lot of her posts were about things that he bought her or fancy places he would take her to. Sometimes, heck, they would even talk about baking or gardening. They were never about looking or finding a new job, so I think she decided to be a stay-at-home girlfriend. She basically became a trade wife without the wife stamp. I don't understand the appeal, but I'm also not one to judge. Hey, if they're both happy with that arrangement, then, well, good for them. A few months in, however, her post started to take a really specific theme. She would post about rings that she saw online or at the jewelry store, or at a wedding dress that she thought that was so beautiful. Occasionally, she would just post a vague message like, "I think tonight might be the night." For any male readers out there, trust me when I tell you that the average woman does not spend a lot of time making posts about window shopping for bridal wear unless she's trying to send somebody a message. I don't know if she was in a rush to get married for the sake of marriage itself, or if she just wanted to get married before I did, but if it was the latter, I figure she'd succeed. Roy and I still haven't set a date, and we're in no rush. We want to take our time planning and saving up first. Besides, we don't share finances, we're both in good health, and we're in no rush to have children, so none of the usual benefits of marriage matter as much to us as they do to others. We'd just like to get it done someday. Cady clearly feels differently about it, but David either wasn't seeing her post or was not picking up on the whole vibe, because this went on for quite some time, and it was only a few days ago that she made a post informing the world that David had finally popped the question, complete with a picture of her hand adorned with one of the biggest, goddest rocks I've ever seen. Based on the background of the photo, it would seem that he actually proposed at my restaurant. I'm almost positive that this was their way of rubbing it in my face, so it's kind of funny that they picked a night when I was out sick. The next day, things got really interesting. My mother calls me to tell me about the engagement I played along as if it was nothing more than a surprise. I didn't tell her that I'd seen the post just in case our conversation got back to Cady. I'm done competing with her, but that doesn't mean I want her to think that she won. The weird part, though, was that my mother invited me to spend a few weeks at the family home just to help plan the wedding. They'd apparently already set a date 2 months from now, and there's so much to do. I asked if that meant I was a maid of honor, but my mother informed me that the title had already been handed out to one of the other teachers from Cady's old job. In the end, I told my mother I would have to think about it. After that, I tried calling and texting Cady to make sure that the offer was actually coming from her. Yeah, it's been 2 days since then, and still haven't got a response. Now, I don't know what to think. If I'm right that she's pushing this wedding along to win some imaginary competition, then I can't imagine she would turn down the chance to rub it in my face for several weeks. Well, the fact that she isn't answering makes me think that maybe she really isn't still mad and actually doesn't even want me there. Arranging for multiple weeks away from the restaurant is kind of a big decision to make if I'm doing it for someone who doesn't even want to talk to me. That leads me to the main concern of this post. Should I accept my mom's invitation and just put on my good faith and the idea that things will go well? Or is that just irresponsible? I can afford the time off, so that's not really the issue. I'm just worrying about dedicating myself to a wedding my sister doesn't want me involved in. My mom assured me that Cady wants me there, but I just don't know if I can trust that without hearing it from Cady herself. I would need to make that choice by next week, so it doesn't feel like I have much time to decide. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. Oh boy, yeah, so this is a sisterly rivalry, like one we haven't seen. However, there's multiple updates to hop into, and the first update, it's been a couple weeks since the original post. If you guys are new to the channel, consider subscribing for daily videos, and let's jump into the first update. Hey, it's been a couple of weeks since my last post, so I should update everybody on the situation with my sister. My original post received a lot of mixed messages in the comment section regarding whether I should go to help. Cady, she needs help planning the wedding, and I asked Roy's opinions, but he was a bit mixed on the issue. All of that wound up being irrelevant, so the day after I posted, Cady wound up calling me herself, and it was much more civil of a conversation than, we've had since we were kids. Her voice sounded almost, normal, like I was talking to a Stepford wife. To be honest, it came across as fake. She said that she wanted to forget the past, and she said that she would love for me to join the wedding preparations. According to Cady, it was a chance to give our relationship a fresh start. To be honest, I had a lot of reservations, and everything just, it seemed to echo with false sincerity what she was saying. Despite that, however, I found myself a little drawn in by the glimmer of hope that maybe we really could put our bygones aside and mend the damages that's been done to our relationship over the years. We've been so distant, and now there was an easy change to bridge the divide. In the end, I happily accepted her invitation and made arrangements for another chef to cover me. I'd still need to do some work in terms of handling finances and contacting suppliers, but I can do most of that from home. If anything needs to be taken care of in person, Roy knows the staff and is willing to go in my place as long as he isn't required to cook. When I arrived at my parents' the following week, Cady was already there. I immediately threw myself into the proving to both her and, myself that we could put aside our differences and discover a sense of solidarity between us. I think we both could feel a bit of a tension simmering beneath the surface at first, but that started to dissipate a little bit as we got deeper into the planning. I could tell that our mom was happy as well. The more Cady and I started to bond a bit better than we had in the past. Cady did not even really do much to rub her engagement in my face like I expected. As we stayed in our old rooms and ate dinner with our parents every night, I started to really get a sense of the kind of relationship we might have had all those years ago, if we had not been so competitive. About a week into the planning, however, Cady made a request that threw me for a loop and threatened the trust that I had just thought we were getting to build. It happened when we got the issue of food. Cady told me she needed somebody to cater the wedding, as one does, and what bothered me was the way she looked at me as if she brought up this idea in an expectant and almost demanding tone. Naturally, I agreed to do it without a second thought, and as soon as I agreed, though, I learned that there was a catch. Cady didn't just want me to cater the wedding, she also wanted me to pay for all the food, pay for the prep and staff involved in the catering, and I told her that can't be done. As much as I could afford to take a couple of weeks off to help her plan, that doesn't mean that time off won't put me under a financial strain. I can't afford to simply cater an entire wedding for free. I also simply don't think that using your own businesses to perform favors is a good idea. It's why I never asked Roy for supplier discounts when we got together. Cady tried to counter by telling me to make it my wedding gift to her, but I just didn't feel right about it. I told her that I'd already thought of a gift, and that a gesture this extravagant just can't happen. She eventually dropped the issue, but her disappointment was palpable. I'm worried now. Her tone has shifted since the conversation, and I have this sense of lingering animosity. I'm worried that resentment that I thought we were working through might not be as gone as I hoped it was. Update number 2. It's been another week since my last update, and everything is seeming to fall apart. I'm feeling so angry, and I'm honestly feeling very betrayed right now that I'm having trouble focusing enough to even type this out. As much as I was worried that tensions between me and Cady might reach a boiling point after I declined to cater the wedding, that never quite happened. Things were a bit awkward between us for a bit, but she ultimately seemed to get over it. After a few days of peace between us, the alterations finished on Cady's wedding dress. My mom had invited a bunch of extended family over so that Cady could model it for them. Just a few aunts and uncles along with some of their children. It was also a chance to try on a few accessories so Cady could plan exactly how she would be decked out on the day of the wedding. Most of them got there before Mom and Cady had left to pick up the dress, figuring that we would all have a nice little lunch together first. Our cousin Marissa, she's 22, still in school, so she was going to have to leave for class in a bit after lunch. I was just getting in one last conversation with her before she headed out when Cady asked me to grab some jewelry from her room that she planned on trying on with the dress, just necklaces, bracelets, that sort of thing. I excused myself from the chat with Marissa and went up to Cady's room. After a bit of rummaging, I managed to find everything she wanted, including a really nice silver flower pendant our grandmother had left Cady before she passed. When I returned, Cady was nowhere to be found. Marissa, she told me that she and our mother had just left really quickly to pick up the dress, so I put the jewelry in my purse for the time being and continued talking to Marissa until she had to leave. Later, when Mom and Cady got back, Cady took the dress up to her room to change, and when she came back down, however, she still wasn't wearing it. She did not look happy as she asked all of the family to gather in the living room. Then she told everyone that she's been robbed. She came and grabbed my purse without my permission, taking it all and pulling the jewelry out of it. I tried telling everyone that Cady had asked me to grab it for her, but nobody would listen. They were all talking over me and making accusations, and they all knew about the past difference between us. They all knew that I loved our grandmother's pendant. Once Cady showed them, quote, evidence by emptying my purse, they were all just too willing to believe her. A couple of aunts who apparently had not seen me talking to Cady to see me go upstairs, they believed wholeheartedly I did it. Even my mom and dad said they were disappointed in me, and neither of them would believe me that I was innocent or give me a chance to explain. My protest fell on deaf ears, and I wound up getting practically disowned and ostracized by the people I hold most dear. I was asked to leave this afternoon. I don't know what to do. I'm typing this on my phone right now, sitting in a parking lot because I'm crying too hard to drive on the highway. I tried calling Roy, but he's still working. I just feel so alone. I never thought that people would suspect me of something so heinous with such little prompting. I should have listened to the comments telling me not to help with the wedding. I feel like my whole life just exploded, all because I would not cater the wedding for free. I'm such an idiot. Update number 3. I know I'm making this update a lot sooner than usual, but a lot's happened in the past 3 days, and when I first got home from my parents' house, I spent most of the night crying and telling Roy about everything that went down. Like a few other commenters, he asked why I didn't call Marissa to have her tell the family that she had been there when Cady asked for the jewelry. To be honest, I just didn't think about it. My head was so full of emotions that the fact that she could back my story slipped my mind entirely. So I contacted her the next day. She spoke to her parents, but it didn't help much. Her father, my mom's brother, didn't think anybody would lie about something like that, and ultimately they believed that I had pressured Marissa into lying to me on my behalf. They also did not see why I would put the jewelry in my purse. I'm just not in the habit of leaving someone's valuables out in the open. I don't know. My uncle did, however, tell my parents what Marissa had told them. My own parents were a bit more understanding when they called me to ask about it, but they were still confused and very conflicted. They didn't see why Marissa would lie, but they also don't see why Cady has to gain from lying either, honestly. The thought's been nagging to me as well. It's not like framing me solves her catering issue. She's always been selfish, but she's never done anything to hurt me this badly. I know, I talked about how we used to try and sabotage each other's relationships, but guys, that's when we were just dumb teenagers. I mean, come on. We haven't done anything like this in a long time. Heck, Cady's only been with one other guy I know of besides David since finishing college. When I finished talking to my parents, they didn't know who to believe at all. They said that they want to believe me, but either way, it's probably best if I keep my distance until after the wedding. That hurt a bit. I've never blamed them in the past for not taking sides when Cady and I fought, but this feels different. By the time I hung up the phone, I wasn't depressed anymore. I was flat out angry, and I wanted to see Cady exposed. If Marissa couldn't do it, I needed to find another way. While I was thinking about the other ways to get back at Cady, I remembered something about her ex. All I know is that his name is Ryan and that he used to serve lunch in Cady's school cafeteria. They broke up a bit before Cady lost her job, and I remembered that I'd seen him just a few months ago and I had been on a supply run at the time. Just after a lunch rush, I'd stopped in a pizza place on the way back to work to pick up some pizza for my staff, since they would handle the rush extremely well. When I was picking them up, I noticed Ryan sitting at a table in the back, talking to Cady. He was dressed like he worked there now, so I assumed that she ran into him there, and they decided to catch up while he was on break. They seemed like they weren't on really good terms. I never mentioned to anybody and eventually forgot about it, and thinking about it now, I wondered if maybe they would keep in touch afterward. If so, he might know something that could help me expose Cady's lie. So I decided to head over to the pizza place that day and see if he was working. I managed to catch him right before his break. Our talk was a pretty revealing one. As it turns out, Cady's drinking did not start after she lost her job. She'd always told us she was laid off, but she actually got fired for coming into school hungover, after Ryan dumped her for being too high maintenance. One of Cady's students has an alcoholic father and knew the smell immediately, so it did not take long for her to be caught. When the admin spoke to her, they came to the conclusion that she must have had something to drink that morning. Oh, it gets worse. As it turns out, when I saw Cady at the pizza place, she's actually gotten back together with Ryan weeks before she was already with David now. He does not have social media, so he had no idea that she was living with another man. When I told Ryan that she was getting married, he was furious. He gave me his number and agreed to help expose her. It won't prove that I didn't steal the jewelry, but it'll help prove that she's deceitful, so people might be more inclined to believe, well, Marissa. Now we just need to figure out how to do it. With most of the family still not talking to me, I don't know how to get Ryan in the room with everyone. We'll figure it out, though. You can count on that. Final update. Update number 4. Well, it took almost a month since my last update, but Cady's finally been exposed. I tried to figure out how to get my family together in one place, and I eventually realized I already knew exactly when they would all be together. I decided to expose Cady at the wedding. I'm not a huge fan of melodrama, so I didn't want to be doing it during the ceremony itself. I decided to confront her in the staging room while she was getting ready. Cady started to throw a huge fit about me showing up uninvited, and she tried to get her aunts and her bridesmaids to throw me out. When she saw Ryan, though, she clammed up almost immediately because she knew what was coming. First, since Marissa was there, I got her to explain in front of our whole family what really happened with that jewelry. Not all of them had heard the story yet, and from the shock on some of their faces, it was clear that at least some of them were far more willing to believe Marissa than her parents had been. Then I had Ryan tell his part of the story. He started from the beginning with how Cady had called him one day asking to have lunch because she wanted to get back together. Thanks to all the nice clothing David's been buying her, she was able to convince Ryan that she's gotten her life together and found a great new job. Everything she told him from the moment they started their affair was an absolute lie. Hearing that, along with the reason she got fired, was just enough to completely turn the family against her. Cady did not even bother denying anything or making excuses. She just sat there as her facade collapsed on itself. The one part I had not expected was that David had been standing outside the staging room for most of it. He'd apparently come to deliver Cady a message. But he wound up hearing everything, and David did not enter the room until Ryan finished his story. Needless to say, he wasn't very happy. He asked Cady if Ryan was telling the true story. She could not summon the words to answer, and I think she realized that David had already knew the answer. And anyways, as I'm sure you would have guessed, the wedding did not happen. David told her to come by the house and get her stuff in a couple of days after he left for the honeymoon alone. To leave the key on the kitchen counter on her way out, and my parents won't let Cady stay with them anymore, so she's just going to be staying with her maid of honor until then. My mom and dad have not actually cut contact with Cady, but they're extremely disappointed in her lies, and her attempt to have them cut from the family. As for me, I'm not talking to her at all. She's tried calling me, but after a few voicemails of her blaming me and playing the victim, I've started deleting her messages. Without listening to them at all, I'm still hurt by everything she did. I can't say exposing the truth really felt good, but I at least felt a sense of closure at the end of it. The only thing to be really grateful for is that the truth finally set me free from our toxic relationship full of manipulation and backstabbing. I guess it set David and Ryan free too. I can only hope that they came to feel as much closure as I did.